So we are talking about the employees surveys, and the hospitals undertake several kind of surveys within the hospitals, within their organizations. And some of the examples are the employee surveys that we will cover today. The other examples are the patient satisfaction surveys, or the hospitals could be carrying out a feasibility surveys for starting or before starting a new service. The hospitals sometimes also carry out surveys about very specific aspects of this service. For example, you want to see whether a kind of OPD service should be started or a particular diagnostic facility. These are more like the feasibility surveys. So today we are talking about the employees survey, and we will look at the types, how to do the sampling, and how to do the how to carry out the survey, how to analyze, and what kind of inferences and reportings that come out of this employee surveys. So this is going to be our scheme of presentation. So we'll talk about the employee surveys as such, the purposes and benefits, the methods and the types of employee surveys, the how to do it, so the process itself, the sampling and analysis, and some inferences and the reporting requirements that are there. So employee engagement in the healthcare goes hand in hand with the patient satisfaction and the healthcare outcomes. In fact, there are n number of studies, large number of studies, which have linked the satisfaction of the employees and the motivation levels of the employees with the outcomes that the hospital is able to achieve. I think it needs no emphasis that employee of the hospital, especially the junior ones, are the ones who are the direct interface for the patients. So when the patient is in the OPD, more than the doctor, the patient is also interacting with all the OPD staff. So whether it is the registration staff or somebody who's facilitating or somebody who's keeping tab on the next patients. So the interface of the patients is essentially the employees. So therefore, if the employees are motivated, it shows in their behavior and conduct with the patients, and also it improves the patient's experience. So the satisfaction and the outcomes are directly linked with the motivation levels of the hospital employees. Now, when we say employees, in the truest terms, this employee would mean that we are talking about only the salaried people, the people who are on our payrolls. However, the context in this presentation is wider. So when we say employee satisfaction or employee survey satisfaction, then we are looking at everybody who is working in the hospital. So some category of people who may not be employees, for example, your visiting consultants are not the employees. Some of the consultants who are on contract employment, they also are not the employee in the true sense. You may have the outsourced services or outsourced facilities, part of the services outsourced. So those people technically are not the employees. But when we say employees survey, especially in this context, then we are looking at all categories of people, including those who are not the employees in the true sense. So the employees are, if the employees are unhappy or dissatisfied, despite their best effort, it is difficult for them to conceal this factor while interacting with patients or the other staff members. And many times, I wouldn't know whether many of you have experienced this, but if you are waiting in a hospital waiting area in the OPD or maybe in front of the ICU, and if you see an altercation happening between the two staff or two employees of the hospital, this definitely does not give a very comforting picture in the minds of people who are waiting and in the minds of the patients. So a dissatisfied employee definitely will have an adverse impact on the the quality of patient interaction. The employee survey help the employers to measure and understand their employees' attitudes. You could also measure the feedbacks, the motivation, and the satisfaction levels. So evaluating employee satisfaction helps to identify problems and resolve them before they impact on the patient care and the treatment. So this is about the employee satisfaction, employee surveys. The purpose is to determine the commitment, motivation, job satisfaction levels of the healthcare workers within the hospital, and in this we cover all categories of workers. And the employee surveys are supposed to be anonymous. So we will see what types of surveys we do, and anonymity is integral part of any employee survey that we want to carry out. Our aim is to obtain the honest and the unbiased feedback, and anonymity of response ensures that the anonymity ensures that the response is likely to be honest and unbiased. A satisfied employee naturally stays longer in the organization, so it has the positive impact on the attrition rates, and it also improves the staff engagement and productivity. Now, staff engagement is one such domain which has the direct bearing on the employee satisfaction, and someday we will also cover this as to what are the activities that we can carry out as part of our staff engagement or the employee engagement process in the hospitals. So today we are talking about this service, so we will stick to this. So what are the benefits? So these are the benefits that we are able to measure the employee satisfaction. We are also able to enhance the patient satisfaction. The employee retention gets better because a satisfied employee stays longer in the organization. It improves productivity, strengthens the supervision because satisfied employee will have an impact on the employee engagement, and that makes forming the teams better. And a better formed or more cohesive team it leads to better quality of work. Evaluating patient care, patient services issues are it's easier to do because the employees will be able to gauge and contribute better. And we are also able to assess the training needs. So the employee surveys will also help us in assessing the training needs depending on what we find. So what are the methods of doing the employees surveys? So questionnaire by far is the most common, and we can use multiple kinds of questionnaires. So you can have a closed-ended questionnaire where these responses are fixed and the employees can only select one of the options given, or you could provide a little open-ended where the employees are able to write in their own words what response they feel is the correct response for your questions. Most often it may be a mix where you have some questions which are closed-ended or which are kind of structured well, and you have some questions where it is not so well structured, so they are open-ended. They allow employees to give a descriptive response to a particular question. Now these questionnaires can be administered either as a pen paper form, so you give a form to the employees to fill. They can also be done online. We know that even an app can be developed for that purpose. You could have Google form being circulated, and the online methods have the advantage that that you are able to also compile the answers very easily. And if it is a structured questionnaire which has the fixed responses to various questions, then you could also compile and do convert this whole summary into graphical forms almost automatically. So that helps. So the questionnaire is one such method. The other methods of employees surveys are the interviews. So these again can be structured interviews where you have the fixed questions that are asked and the responses are recorded, or you could have unstructured interviews. This can be done in person or it can be done telephonically. However, at least in our country, I have not seen very many organizations getting into a telephonic kind of an employee survey. So the popular one is the questionnaire and then the interviews. Now, typically an interview is conducted either as part of the employee's performance evaluation. So you have evaluation being done where employees response or employees understanding of his performance and contribution to the hospital is discussed. The other ways of conducting interview is that you conduct a exit interview. This is basically for employees who are quitting, leaving the organization, and you want to find out, get a feedback from them as to what could have been done better to retain them, or what are the ways in which the employees' work environment and their working conditions can be made better. So exit interview is one such form where the employee surveys are done. Now, typically an exit interview should happen after the employee's dues have been cleared from the hospital. Uh, the fact that the hospital is holding on to the onto something that the employees will need, and then if you conduct a exit interview or an exit survey, you are not likely to get an honest and unbiased opinion, essentially because I mean, if I have to take something from you, and this interaction has the potential to annoy the HR department or the hospital leadership, then there is an element that comes that my benefits might get stuck, so I will give an answer which suits the situation. So then the unbiased opinion obviously will not come forth. So the interviews, and secondly, the interviews should not be conducted by those who have the authority over the employees being interviewed, because again, the same question of obtaining the honest and the unbiased opinions and the responses. So what are the types? So we have the employee satisfaction surveys. We could have the employee surveys to assess the training needs, or the exit interviews. There can be many other purposes for which the employee surveys can be done, but these by far are the most common ones. So what are the types of questions that are asked when we make a employee survey form? So if you browse through the net, and if you see, try to see what kind of employee satisfaction or survey forms are there, you'll find a large number of them. There is a huge variety, and you could possibly take any of them that suits you. But it is important to understand the motive behind what you are going to motive behind a particular survey. So if your survey is directed towards finding out the training needs, and finding out about the about which professional programs should be organized, then the questions have to be asked accordingly. Now, so the questions can be the about the relationship that the employee has with the hospital or the organization. So you could have the organizational relationship questions, where you can talk about the working conditions, the service conditions, the benefits, the perks, and various other things. You could have the questions leading or rather relating to the teamwork. So this talks about the employee's immediate work environment, his own team in the setting in which he is performing, and this also in some way is related to the organization relations. Then we could have the questions regarding the information or the awareness level of the employee. So we are talking about whether the employee is aware of his own charter of duties, or the benefits that he derives from the hospital, or the grievance procedures. So when you're trying to gauge what the employee's awareness level is, then those questions fall in this category. And then you could have the relationship with the supervisor. This talks about the, again, somewhat linked to the teamwork, whether the employee is able to function efficiently and effectively within this small, we call it the sharp end of work, where the work is actually happening. Then we could have questions relating to the job passion and the self-evaluation. So how the employee sees himself in the overall scheme of things in the hospital. We could take the feedback from the employees. So there we are asking about his suggestions, maybe. Work balance and the fairness at work. So these are some of the areas about which you can have questions in your employee surveys. The employee surveys typically employee surveys typically ask questions in multiple ways, like I said in the beginning. You could have multiple choice questions where the responses are fixed, or you could have some questions multiple choice and the others on a scale like a Likert scale, or you can have some questions which are open-ended. So depending on what you are trying to gauge, you could have the question framed accordingly. Now, what are the surveys? So every survey that we carry out, we must establish what is the goal. Why are we doing these surveys? So there can be one routine survey that possibly happens every once in a year. You're trying to assess whether the overall general satisfaction levels are appropriate and whether they need some intervention. The other could be that you're doing a specific survey to find a specific limitations or specific input from the employees. So those goals need to be established well. Then determine your sample. Like all these surveys, all the audits that we do, all the assessments that we do, all the measurements that we do in the hospitals, we need to figure out whether the answers to our surveys will be such that we can generalize it over all the employees. So under the ideal circumstances, yes, it will be better that all the employees are asked the questions and then all the responses are taken together. So when this is analyzed, then whatever inferences are drawn, they will be applicable to the entire organization. However, many times this may not be possible. Why? Because you may have limited resources to carry out a survey. Maybe the organization is so large that it is not possible to obtain all the responses in a short span of time, or maybe that you do not have. I mean, you don't want to do so much of work of getting all the responses and then analyzing them and invest so much of energy and effort into the process. So the answer is that you take a sample. Now we have seen this sampling in the other audits and measurements and indicators. Everywhere a sampling can be done. So here also you take a sample, and what sampling should be done is dependent on the statistical principles. And I'll just show you a table which is a popular table which shows the sample size vis-a-vis the total population size. So I'll just show that table in a while. So the purpose of sampling is to draw such minimum number of employees, or to take such minimum number of employees whose responses, when taken and analyzed, can be generalized to the entire set of employees in the hospital. Now, here we will have to remember that if the questions or the responses that we are seeking are applicable to all the employees, then possibly our population size will be all the employees. But if you are assessing something very specific, for example, you are assessing something relating to the nurses, so your population size will be only nurses. Now the sample cannot be selected, or rather the sample size cannot be computed by taking the entire hospital staff and say that, okay, this is the sample we will need. No, because your aim of doing this survey is to find responses specific to the nurses. So your population size is all the nurses, and sample has to be calculated accordingly. Similarly, if you are looking at GDS, then possibly the total GDS is your population size, and then you select the sample. Next is choose the interviewing methodology or the questionnaire methodology. So what will be the method, whether it will be a structured or unstructured, or which way it will work. Then we need to create a questionnaire. So if it is an interview and it is a structured interview, then definitely a questionnaire will also be required for the interview. But if it is a pure pen paper kind of a survey or a computer based survey, in that case the questionnaire is without the questionnaire you can't possibly do a survey. So we need to figure out what questions to ask and whether they can be open-ended or close-ended. We have discussed this earlier. Another important aspect is that sometimes gets missed out while making a questionnaire, especially relating to the employees surveys, is that the questions have to be validated, or the questionnaire has to be validated. Now you can't just put random questions, 10 questions, and say that, okay, this is our tool and we will use this to assess the employees responses. because then it may not give you the correct picture. So validating a questionnaire is an important exercise, and that can be done using either Cronbach's alpha scoring system, or there are many other ways of doing it. And for this purpose, typically a pilot is required. So we do a pilot, validate the questionnaire, and then we implement it for our sample size. The survey process will mean that we distribute the questionnaire. Now it can be done on a mobile phone and distribute the link, or you distribute the questionnaire using the paper form, or whichever way. I mean, this is something simpler to implement. We need to remember that the sampling methods and the sample size must be met. So this is distributed to the target population and stress on the need of an honest survey. This survey must always be anonymous and should maintain the anonymity of the person responding and the anonymity of the person collecting, because there also can be a little element that may affect your responses. So collect and analyze the data. So we need to, of course, once the questionnaires have been submitted, then we need to calculate and do this, the summarization. Share the outcome measurement, communicate to the management for decision making on the prepared report, and feedback to the employees. This is something not very difficult to do, because eventually each survey will get analyzed and get communicated to the management. Now what management chooses to do with it is something that they have to take a call on. So once we have obtained these surveys, then we need to see that the calculations are done, the summary is made, and the data is presented in a graphical form, and then we need to calculate the responses for each of the questions that we have asked, and also for the entire questionnaire. So we can say that the responses, this much percentage for the first question where we asked about the work conditions, the second one about the training needs. So the response is that this much percentage. So typically the percentage is calculated by this using this formula, nothing really great. The scores, average scores achieved, and the maximum possible score. So if you have, let us say, a question where the maximum possible score is 5, and you have 10 employees who have given you a variety of responses from 1 to 5. So the maximum possible score is 50, 5 for 10 people, and then you add up the whole thing together and take a percentage out of it. So this is the table where you can see the sample size for your population size. So if your population size is 50, the sample size is 44. And if you keep increasing the population size, your sample size also grows, but not proportionately. So for a sample size of 5,000, for the population size of 5,000, the sample size is 370. Okay. So this is about the sample size. This table is handy, and this will be available in the video that you can see on the YouTube channel of the Research Foundation. So next we need to measure and analyze the response for identifying the areas of concern. So we may have issues relating to the work conditions, the salaries, or the training requirements. We need to see the overall level of job satisfaction. This also is one of the requirements of the accreditation system, both in the JCI and the NABH. So this has to be kind of worked out or calculated. Suggestions for improving the employee satisfaction. Now we obviously analyze what responses have come from the employees and see whether the suggestions that they have given can be acted upon. We can also look at the management issues, and sometimes the management issues will be of such broad nature that they are applicable to the entire set of employees. But there can be local issues. There can be issues with the housekeeping supervisor, where housekeeping staff is not happy with the way they are being handled, or the issues with the floor in charges of the nursing, or the ward in charges of the nursing. So these kind of supervisory issues can also come to fore. Now, these things will come only when we have asked questions pertaining to these areas. Now, if we don't ask the question, then possibly we can't say that our overall job satisfaction is, let us say, low, around 50%. And then we can't, unless we have asked a question, we can't say that this low job satisfaction is because of poor quality supervision or there are issues with the supervisory level. So, unless we have asked a question, it is not right to label issues without having the basis for it. So that's one point that we need to remember. So these are the other areas that might get highlighted: training and salary issues, performance issues, benefits, and the recommendations. So these recommendations will come from the employees. Next, we have the data should be entered into a database or a spreadsheet program. Like I said earlier, if you're using an automated method or an app or a Google form or some similar format, then the data is very easy to compile. In fact, these softwares, they will compile the data for you. You don't have to do it. But if it's a paper form, then we need to summarize it in the spreadsheet like Excel or in a database. Then because this database will then calculate and will help us calculate the summaries and the responses that we need to find out. Okay. So the other points are that the partial analysis should generally be avoided, because we will not know what we have missed. So unless we have completed the analysis, we should not assume that a response is like this. Avoid biases during analysis. So sometimes we are able to discover the identity of the person who's responding, and then we disregard some of the responses. So that's not right. All the responses must be included. Once the person is part of the sample size, then all his response has to be included in the computations. So what do we do with this data now? Once we have compiled it, we convert it into a graphical form where the data can be visually understood, because eventually the management is not going to see your 300 line 50 column Excel sheet, but what they will be interested in, the summarized data. It is useful for comparing data from several different points. Yes, once you graphically compile and summarize the data and graphically display it, the understanding is easier. You can also compare over a timeline. So your results 3 months back and your results now, they are comparable if you are graphically putting them together. The reports should include the purpose of the survey. So there is a requirement that these reports must be made. Now, typically, the employee surveys will be conducted either by the HR department, which is most common, and sometimes the quality department or the quality person ends up doing these surveys. So whoever does it, that's not the issue. The issue is that each survey must result or must end in a properly prepared report, and that report must cover the important aspects of this survey. So what was the purpose of the survey, the target population, if we calculated a sample size, then what was the basis of that sample size, how the questionnaire was distributed or how the interviews were conducted, and how the responses were collected, how many responded. So if you have distributed 100 questionnaires, is that all 100 people returned it back, or you have some responses which never came back? Brief summary of the highlights, that means the brief points that we have discovered in the survey, and the actual responses for each question should also be part of the report, because this report will get preserved and will be used for future comparisons. You may not preserve your Excel sheet or your raw responses or your data collection forms, the employee survey forms, but this report must be made well so that it is available for references in future, and it is useful for when it is referred to in future. So next we look at the findings. So we tabulate it, create percentages, maybe calculate some indicators. So like NABH has some indicators which have to be calculated relating to the employee satisfaction surveys. So those indicators need to be calculated, and then the people can sit together, put their heads together, and find out what recommendations can be made out of this. So some indications would have been given by the employees themselves. The others need to be worked out or need to be discerned by the management by looking at the survey responses. And the last but one of the important step is to share the results of the employees surveys. So if this is important when you have found that your employee satisfaction is very high and people are motivated, this must be shared widely, because this acts as a reassurance to the staff that yes, what they are working and what they are the conditions within which they are working are generally good. But if you found something alarming, this also must be shared, because this allows people to come out with possible solutions and maybe introspect as to how the things can be made better. So whether the good or the bad, both the survey results must be shared. So there is a sample survey form that I'll just show on the screen, and this will be also available in the video that we will put out. So I'm closing this presentation now. This presentation will be available, and anyone who wants to have this presentation can put his email ID in the chat box. We will share this presentation and also the form that we have made as part of this this presentation. So I'll close this presentation and share the employee survey format. Before I do that, are there any questions? I'll be happy to take. Yes, please. Are there any questions? No questions?
Sir, I have a question.
Yes.
Sir, can you repeat the slide number 12, sir? You have put some formulas to calculate that.
That's okay. Here is slide number 12.
12, yes, sir.
So the basically you're calculating the percentage. Nothing really great in this. This will be available in the video that we will upload on the YouTube by maybe tomorrow.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Okay. Any more questions? No more questions. So I'll just briefly show the Word document, that is the survey format, and then we could take more questions. Just a minute. I'll just show the. Okay, so here is the Word document that can be seen. Is this visible?
Yes, sir.
So
Yes,
if
sir.
so, as you can see, this part, the first two, the employee ID and the name, are optional. In employee surveys, they should always be optional, because if you make it mandatory, then nobody will give you a correct response. So the names are given only by those people who want to give their name. Otherwise, it is an anonymous survey. This is an example where we have used a scale. So there is a scale from 5 to 1 or 1 to 5. This is an example what is called the Likert scale. So this scale is used, and this format has only one kind of questions. So this all of them have to be graded on a scale like this. And in the end, there are two open-ended questions where the aim is to ask what is the best thing they like about the hospital and what is the something that they don't like about the hospital, and then some suggestions for improvement. So this is the simplest way of putting together the assessment for the employee survey. So this is what it is, and you could make it very long, 4 pages, 5 pages, multiple choice questions, group the questions into various categories like we've discussed in the presentation. So all those options are available. Here the idea is to just show a template. This is not a template which is mandatory, but this is the basic minimum that should be used. So are there any questions on this?
Sir, it is mandated that NABH stresses on this employee survey, sir?
There is an indicator which is part of compulsory indicators to be monitored. So in that way, yes, the NABH mandates that.
Oh, thank you, sir.
The JCI also mandates that. So they even in the JCI accreditation system, you have a particular indicators that need to be measured.
Sir, we do take a survey. We do get a questionnaire from the employees during their increment time, like a performance analysis also. So that will that have a interconnected locking, sir?
There is no embargo on you doing the employee survey at the time of appraisal, annual appraisal. But classically, the appraisal is a process which is different from this survey. So it is I don't know. In my personal opinion, the appraisal should be a distinct, separate process, and the survey should be a separate process. Because if you mix the two, then see, the purpose of the appraisal is totally different. That you are doing it basically to find out how the employees have been working and how he has performed over a period of time, and based on that, possibly give him a promotion or a pay raise. The survey is directed differently. So for it to be useful, it should be dealing. That is what my opinion is.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Okay. Any more questions? Uma Maheshwar, your voice is not clear, so maybe you can try again and speak slowly. No, we can't hear you. I think you put your question in the chat box, because we can't hear you. I mean, I can't hear you at all. Okay, so slide number 12. Okay, Uma Maheshwar has asked, what is the issue if it is not happening? Biggest corporate hospitals in Telangana headquarters, what is the use? Well, it's a comment. I mean, I don't want to say why they are not doing it. Okay. Okay. So you want to know the YouTube link? Yes. You could on the YouTube just search for the Research Foundation or the RAFA, and then you will find the channel there. But we also post it in the groups, so it will be there. Okay, so Mama Ishwar has a comment. Why exit interviews are not happening? It's just going on the whims and fancies of the owners. Well, the owner is a owner, so sometimes the owner might like to behave in a manner which may not be rational. The good HR practice is to have exit interviews, but why a particular owner is not doing it, I think it will not be for me to answer that. The time interval for Dr. Ashok Sharma has asked the time interval for conducting surveys, monthly or quarterly. Dr. Ashok, the employee surveys are generally done once in 6 months or maybe once in a year. If you want to measure every quarterly, then maybe you are looking at a specific issue, something like training or a preparedness. Yes, it can be done that way, but measuring more than once in 6 months is not required. That's what I feel. Is there a benchmark on staff attrition? Tejaswini ji, you will have to find the staff attrition trends in your area, because I find that the attrition rates vary in a huge range across various regions. So some of the hospitals that I have seen in Maharashtra, the attrition is almost zero. Whereas if you come to Delhi or around, then you will find that there is a significant attrition. So there is no benchmark as such. You could measure your own and possibly use your initial measurements as benchmarks for yourself. Okay, a lot of people have asked for presentation. Yes, the presentation will be there. Target population for every employee or both. I think I answered this question, Dr. Ashok. You're asking about the target population. Ideally, if possible, you should be able to, actually take the inputs from all the employees, because that is what is the intent. However, if the employee base is huge and you do not want to get into so much of a logistic exercise of distributing questionnaire and calculating it later, you could take a sample. But yes, sample is something that is not, that is to be done only when you can't take the full, all the employees. Okay. So I think the questions are over. Thank you very much. Thank you for participating in this.